Okay, well, we're beginning a new parak. Nun Beis on the base. Today's daf is Nun Gimel. Um, guys, a little agadata today. Okay, says the Mishnah. Kol menachos boyis matzah. All menachos. Now there are menachos which you don't bake, right? Or we don't rise. Or kol minchas soilus. You don't bake it. You just put it mixed together. Then there's an afe saner which is baked. You have a machvas which is fried, marcheshes which is fried. We saw the minchas chavitin kohen gadol. Is it fried and baked, or is it baked and fried? In other words, there are situations, all situations where it can come chametz, right? All situations become chametz. Every situation of a mincha has to be, it can't be chametz. In other words, there's a mitzvah to be matzah. In addition, if it's chametz, you can't go ahead and put it on mizbeach, because anything that is the sa'ar that is like fruit, it would be kurim, we can't put on mizbeach, right? There's a mitzvah that you can't do that. So all menachos they come matzah chutz michametz shebetoida. Now there's four types of breads that accompany the toida, three of them which are unleavened, and one which is chametz. Now it's interesting to note, Taisus points out that it really isn't a mincha. Guys, we said a toida is a shlamim. It's not really a mincha, but for all intents and purposes, it's trying to tell you that this is chametz. And the second, the shtei lechem, which we're very familiar with, the two lechem that accompanied the kiftei atzeres on Shavuos, that those were what? Those came from chametz. Shein boys chametz. Now, how did you go ahead? How did you go ahead and make? How did you make the shtei lechem? And how did you make the lachmei toida and with chametz? How exactly did you make it? In other words, usually you have to make chametz. You would take an agent, which we'll call sa'ar, right? If you have made sourdough challah, they call it a starter. A starter is sa'ar. That's mamish classic chametz. It has the capacity to be machmetz. So now, how would you make it? Would you take the existing isarin of flour, mix it with water, create a sa'ar, then take that and reintroduce it into the mix? Or will you take the isarin of flour and you would take an agent that already had been established as sa'ar and use that as the agent to make it chametz? So are you making chametz from the existing sa'ar, or you're bringing in a foreign substance? That's the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir is of the opinion, the sa'ar, what would you do? You would boider, you would go ahead and separate it, right, from the isaroin, lahen mitoichan, umechamtzon, and you would go ahead and knead it, and until it becomes what? Chametz, and then you'd reintroduce it back into what? Into the original level of isaroin. So basically, you know for sure, you're not adding or detracting from the amount of flour because you're using the isarin itself. The Maila of Rameya, guys, you're using the exact amount of isarin of flour. Man, you can't be chaser. So you're using the exact amount because you're taking the flour from the isarin itself. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Afi eina min hamuvchor. It's not going to be the best way to go ahead and be machmetz. It's not going to be the best quality of chametz. And therefore, Ella, what do? Maybe as hasa'ar, you bring a foreign sa'ar, not from this, and you put it inside the isarin dish. So let's say it takes up 1/10. You're going to put in 90% more, whatever the amount. So you don't take it from the existing isarin. You put it in the clear isarin. You put it in, and then you go ahead and put in the rest. So the problem with this is, the problem Rabbi has with this is the following. I think this is the best way to explain it. Let's say we created SAR, and you took it's 5 and 5. So you have 5% that's 10% is the max, right? So you have 5 flour and 5 water. And now you're going to introduce it into what? Into 95. That would be perfect. It comes out, you have this 95 and 5, works out well. So you're not too much, too little flour, too much flour. What happens if this sa'ar the ratio was 7 to 3. So and you have 95, you have 95. Now you're going to be 102. You're going to be two more. What happens? It's 3 to 7. You're going to have less. In other words, if you're going to use, according to Rabbi, a foreign substance, you may be going ahead and adding onto the flour, the isar in the flour, or detracting from it, depending upon how much flour there was in this foreign substance. Bishleim, according to me, that you're taking the existing flour from the existing sarin, you have no such problem. But according to now, I guess Reb Meir is moida taking an existing leavening agent is better in order to make the quality of chametz than going ahead and creating it. So that's the Ma'ila Rabbi Yehuda who says, it's not the best thing. Conversely, says Rameh, I got a problem. The way you do it, you may go ahead and volume-wise, you may be detracting from the volume of the Isarin or increasing the volume of the Isarin. We will discuss this Bez Hashem tomorrow. That's tomorrow's stuff. Okay, so for the Mishnah, the review of the Mishnah, the only chametz that is present in the Beis Hamikdash that the chametz was ended up in the Mizbeach would be the Shtei Lechem. I don't know the Shtei Lechem they took it. We'll see how that worked. I don't know if there was a chametz, but it was called the Mincha and the Toida. The Toida, those are the only things they made that chametz. The only things they made chametz. And then there's a question about exactly how did you make the chametz? Did you make it from the existing Yisarin, according to Reb Meir, according to Yehuda, from a foreign agent? You go ahead and do it. Says the Gemara. Boy mine Rav Preda, the famous Rav Preda, who taught his Talmidim 400 times in Masechta Erevin, right? Says Rav Preda, he asked me Rabbi Ami. So the Rabbi Preda asked the following from Rabbi Ami. L'chol menachos shein bois matzah minalan. How do you know that they all come? How do they know that they all come matzah? How do you know? Now, Taisus learns pshat over here. There's 3 levels, guys. Look at me. There's chametz, there's matzah, and there's sior. Not seor, but sior. Sior is, according to the Mishnah in Psachim, the middle state, where it's not exactly matzah and it's not exactly chametz. There's a machloikis what that state is. According to Rabbi Meir, it's when the flour it turns a pale white. According to Rabbi Yehuda, is where you see the antennas, the crack of the, if you might remember it, the crack of it looks like the antennas of a bug, and you see it begins to crack. It's that point in time. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's a later point in time. So the Gemara wants to know, how do you know? I know you can't use chametz, but maybe you could use this middle stage. Why do you go ahead and tell me you need matzah? Fred the Gemara matzah minalan, since there's another option. Since it says say for chametz, I mean the Gemara. We're going to see the Gemara. Guys, when it says that you can't put chametz on mizbeach, when it says that the shtei lechem is from chametz, when it says the lachmi toid is from chametz, I know everything else is matzah. In other words, by the process of elimination, I know it has to be matzah, right? Guys are here. When it says the other ones are chametz, I know it can't be matzah. And the answer is no, you wouldn't know matzah. You'd maybe know it can't be that level 3 chametz, but maybe it can be this middle level called CR, each one according to their relative opinion. That's the Gemara's kasha when it says, how do you know it has to be matzah? Guys, you good? That's the Gemara's opinion. Says the Gemara, boy miner of Preda Rav Ami, minayin l'chol ha-menachos shehem bois matzah. Minalon. Says the Gemara, the ksiv ba, the one that says openly it has to be matzah, it says openly it has to be matzah. The loy ksiv ba, and the one Menachos where it doesn't say openly it has to be matzah, Amid Aleph, that ksiv ba zois tyrus ha-mincha. Zois tyrus ha-mincha, hakrev oisah b'nei Aaron l'fnei Hashem, el pnei mizbeach. What does zois tyrus mean? We give one Torah achas l'chol Menachos. So once it says by the ones it says matzah, then we go ahead and say zois tairas will be marba, all has to be matzah. So that's how you know it. That's how you know it has to be matzah and not chametz. Okay. So it says zois tairas hamincha kakir v'sab b'nei Aaron l'fnei Hashem l'pnei hamizbeach v'hanay seres mimena yochelu, and whatever's left over yochelu Aaron ubanov matzahs teyachel, not matzahs teyachel. So Amalei. So Rav Preda said back to Rav Ami. So Rav Preda went ahead And he said back to Rav Ami, mitzvah loy kami boili. That is a mitzvah to use matzah. That wasn't a question. Ki kami boili la'akiv. So I really jumped the gun, guys. In other words, good, the mitzvah is level 3. But how do you know you can't be yaitza with 2? Again, you have matzah, you have chametz. Level 3 is chametz, right? I know you can't go ahead and use level 3. I know the best thing is level 1. But maybe that's the mitzvah to use level 1. But b'di'evet, if you use level 2 to sayer, it would be okay. So that's the handle of the Gemara. That's the handle of the Gemara. Okay, how do you know? So I know it says matzahs. I know that's the best thing. So mitzvah can be boile. It's not a mitzvah. Ki can be boile. When's my shaila la'akev? How do you know that if it's not matzah, it's ma'akev? How do you know b'di'evet if you use level 2? How do you know it's ma'akev? How do you know it's ma'akev? Maybe the best thing, of course, is level 1 matzah. And I know you can't use level 3 chametz, but maybe you can use level 2. So Amalei, so Rav Asi said back to Rav Preda, la'akiv namiksiv. It says loise ofa chametz ela matzah. Don't bake it chametz, and therefore we say, it should be chametz. Ela, what should it be? It should be matzah. So therefore, I know from the lashon loise ofa chametz, it has to be level 1. It can't be what? It can't be level 2, because level 2 is not matzah, guys. Level 2 is not chametz, but level 2 is not matzah. Therefore, it says loise ofa chametz, and we want to suggest it means matzah. Now, the Gemara is going to ask on that. With the dakdom, it should go very geshmak. Mascular of chista. Ve'ema loisafa chametz elasir. Good, not level 3 chametz, but maybe seer level 2. Yes? In other words, guys, the word matzah is, they added. That's not the limud. It says loisafa chametz. It says openly, you can't go ahead and eat chametz. You can't bake chametz, right? So you can't bake chametz. So, so you assumed you can't bake chametz, but what could you? Matzah. 1 second. There's another option. There's seor. This is this level. And now the Gemara is going to go through the 2 opinions, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda and the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Says, seor deman, the level of seor, again, don't make the mistake. Seor is chametz sheba chametz, guys. The difference in the yud. You guys, Siyar is this other level. It's not Siyar. Siyar is Mamish Chamish. This is Siyar. Siyar Deman. Either Reb Meir, if it's of Reb Meir, the Rabbi Yehuda, Matzah Ma'al Yehi. Guys, Reb Meir says the following. Reb Meir says, when you go ahead and knead it, and it begins to rise, and it's white on top, that is Siyar, according to Reb Meir. You know what Rabbi Yehuda calls that? Matzah. Rabbi Yehuda is the next level, right? He calls it matzah. So obviously, that's a kshma. Your seer, it is no, according to, in other words, according to Reb Meir's level 2, that's Rabbi Yehuda's level 1. It's the same thing. That's matzah. Either Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Meir, chametz ma'al Yehu. And if it's according to Reb Meir, you know what you call the seer of Reb Yehuda? You call it level 3. You call it chametz. He holds seor is when it's white. Rabbi Yehuda holds when it begins to crack. But when it begins to crack, according to Reb Meir, that's chametz. So the Gemara wants to know, how can you entertain that it's seor, memanavshach? If it's shitas Reb Yehuda in Reb Meir, right, that's matzah. If it's shitas Reb Meir in Reb Yehuda, that's matzah. If it's shitas Reb Meir in Reb Yehuda, that's already chametz. It says either Reb Meir. So says the Gemara, very good. According either Reb Meir or Reb Meir, when you get malchus for that, because it's you know that seer, you get malchus for seer. Guys, you won't get Reb Meir holds for seer, you would get malchus if you eat that mid-level 2, but you're not getting chorus. So you're not getting chorus, but again, it's not matzah. Ela de Reb Yehuda or Reb Yehuda. Again, who's the limit for? The Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, who says you do not get malchus. Maybe when it says lo siyafa chametz, it means you can't bring a mincha from what? From 3, but you could bring it from 2, according to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, right? In Rabbi Yehuda. Again, Rabbi Meir's seor is malchus. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't get malchus. So lo Rabbi Yehuda, as long as you didn't get to the level of being cracked, where it becomes the way mamish is what is chametz, then it should be what? it should be okay for a mincha. So how do you know that what? It's ma'akiv. You want to know. I know it's a mitzvah level 1, but how do I know that level 2, b'di'evid, wouldn't be good? Maskiv lo Rav Nachman. So that's one question, fellas. That's one question we're asking on this limud. We're going to ask 3 questions to knock out this limud of Lesofa Chometz. This is the first one. You're saying Chometz not b'matzah, yes? Maybe seer, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Knock out question 1. Maskiv lo Rav Nachman by Yitzchok. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak asked another question. So the first one was of Chisda. This is Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Ve'ema loisafa chametz ela chalot. It can't be chametz, but it could be boiled. In other words, if you go ahead and take flour and put in boiling water, I know you get a bagel, right? So this is so chalot. Ma'iniu. What's chalot? That's revicha, revuchin, revicha. I deika revicha ksivba, revicha v'hoyloi ksivba. Revicha, says the Gemara. So the Gemara wants to know that if you have a din to make a revicha, it says ksivba revicha. V'haloi ksivba revicha, and by mincha it doesn't say revicha. It says loisaf chametz. So it's mashma when it says loisaf chametz. It's not revicha. So what's your kasha? What's your kasha? In other words, if it says revuchin, it says it, and if it doesn't say it, then it doesn't apply. So what's your kasha, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak? What's your kasha? The ema the ksivba revicha mitzvah berevicha udaloi ksivba revicha iboi berevicha laisi v'iboi matzah laisi. Okay, in other words, I'm asking you a good kasha. Outside. You're telling me, how do you know that the mincha has to be matzah? Because it says loisei ofeh chametz. We have our first kasha, maybe it's siyar. We have a second kasha, maybe it's revicha. On that second kasha, we're trying to figure it out. 1 second. If it says revucha, it says revucha. And if it doesn't say it, it doesn't say it. So what's your kasha? And here's the answer. Where it says it, it's a mitzvah to do it. Where it doesn't say it, ken zayin what b'di'evet, it's good. In other words, where it says revicha, it has to be revicha. Where it doesn't say revicha, ken zayin, it could be b'di'evet. But einachinami, it doesn't have to be matzah. So it's a second question. Loisaf a chametz, sior, loisaf a chametz, revicha, chaluta, right? Memela, how do you know that it's ma'akiv if you don't bring a mincha from matzah? How that has to be ma'akiv? Perhaps b'di'evet, it could be revicha. And your kasha that would state revicha, that's a mitzvah. But where it doesn't state revicha, maybe b'di'evet, I could use it. But you don't know for sure that it has to be matzah. So we have Rav Nachman's by Yitzchak say, we have Rav Chisda's question, maybe it means sior. We have Nachman by Yitzchak, maybe it means revicha. So again, 2 bomb questions. Now we have a third one. Okay, now we'll introduce a third one.
Sign the Gemara again with this revicha. Could you do it one more time?
Yeah, sure. Maskif lo Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. He's asking the following. Ve'ema, you want to say lo yosef se'afa chametz means matzah. Perhaps lo se'afa chametz is ela chalot. When it says it shouldn't be matz, it shouldn't be chametz. Maybe it shouldn't be chalot. Chalot and revicha are synonymous. Nothing. That means that it was like. You know what that sound is? Okay. Anyway, chalit my nihu. What is chalita? That's revicha. Now, 1 second. What's your kasha? Ika revicha. If it has to be revicha, ksiv be revicha. If it has to be revicha, it's written in the Torah revicha. For her, and by the karbi mincha, like ksiv be revicha. It just says loy seyafa chametz. When it says loy seyafa chametz, it's mashma. It should not be revicha. What's your kasha? It says loy seyafa chametz. Once it says loy seyafa chametz, we know it can't be revicha. And a mela, it has to be matzah. So what's your kasha? Says the Gemara, no, I have a really good kasha. Says for her like revicha. Says the Gemara, ve'ema by mincha perhaps the ksivba berevicha, where it says there has to be revicha, then mitzvah berevicha. It's a mitzvah to be revicha. Udek like ksivba, and when it doesn't say that it has to be revicha, then iboy revicha laisi. If you want, you can bring it revicha. Iboy if you want matzah laisi. You have a choice. But not that it has to be matzah, but the it might even be what? Revicha. Good. Okay, that's the way the Gemara reads. Maskula Ravina, the Ema loise afa chametz, lemakim gavra bilav ba'alma, that a person who goes ahead and bakes a mincha chametz, he's over in Issa. However, vifsule le mifsula, but it won't be possible. In other words, lois, touch the words. Do not bake it chametz. You shouldn't bake it chametz. But in fact, if you do, it won't passel it. So how do you know matzah? Again, these are three questions on the Gemara's limud. Rav Ami answered Rav Preda. Rav Ami answered Rav Preda the following. He said, when it says let's say ofa chametz, it means it must be matzah, and if it's not matzah, it's no good. Fred the Gemara three kashas. Says Rav Chisda, maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't have to be matzah. Maybe it could be sior. Like maybe it could be sior. Says Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Maybe it doesn't have to be matzah. Maybe it could be revucha. And finally, says Ravina, how do you know it's even speaking about it? That it has to be, can't be chametz. Maybe it could be chametz. And the isser is to telling you that what? That you shouldn't bake it chametz. But you're not. It's not. But if you do it, it doesn't passel. So therefore, the Gemara, you have no raya. You have no raya from the words leisuyafa chametz. Again, to our limud of leisuyafa chametz, you have no raya. Guys, you good? That's what we did so far. That's what we did so far. Now, says the Gemara, Ella, what's Ella mean? Getting Ella means not getting down to write the brass tacks. Ella, right? Ella, because of these few questions, Minalon, how do your Menachos have to be matzah? And if it's not matzah, it's ma'akiv. Kiditanya. It says, fellas, matzah tiyeh. The pasuk says, let me find you the pasuk. V'im mincha ala machavas korbanecha soilis. This is Vayikra Beis pasuk hey. V'minchas al machavas korbanecha soilis belul b'shemen matzah siyeh. What is matzah? What is siyeh? That's one of the buzzwords. Siyeh. That's the way it's got to be, right? Siyeh. That's the way it's got to be. So matzah siyeh. Now I know it has to be matzah. Okay, since it has to be matzah, that's how I know. Says the Gemara, Ella, minolin kedetanya matzah, yochel matzah, tamad loymar siyeh, hakosav kava chayva. The pasuk's kaveh chayv. This is the source, guys. Not lesuyafa chometz, but matzah siyeh. It has to be matzah. That's the source. Boy minei Rav Preda miravami minayin lecholam menachos shenilushais bepaishron. How you know menachos? You have to knead with lukewarm water. How do you know you have to knead them at lukewarm water? Umishamron shelo yachmitzu, and you have to watch them that they shouldn't become chametz. Boy mine Rav Preda Ravami minayin lecholam menachos shenilushais bepaishron umishamron shelo yachmitzu, and you have to watch them that they don't become chametz. Nilmidenu mi Pesach. Let's learn out from Pesach. T'chsiv ushmatem es hamatzos. That right, you're watching. What are you watching? That it doesn't become chametz. So just like by matzah, you watch that it doesn't become chametz. Hu adin by what? By menachos. You watch it doesn't become chametz. So amalei begufa ksiv. So Rav Ami said to Rav Preda. Rav Ami said to Rav Preda, he said to him, begufa ksiv matzahs tiyeh hechiyah. So matzahs tiyeh hechiyeh, you should keep it alive. Meaning you should keep it in that state. Keep it in the state that it doesn't become chametz. So I don't need to learn it from Pesach. I can learn it zichalein in the parsha of in the parsha of siyeh. Now the Gemara is going to ask, you just use siyeh to tell me what it's not. It's ma'akiv. How could you use to teach me that they have to use lukewarm water? Fred the Gemara kasha. V'afikte la'akev. You went ahead and used it to teach me that if you don't make the mincha a matzah from matzah, it's ma'akiv. So how now can you tell me that it teaches me that you have to knead it with lukewarm water? Says the Gemara in Cain, if the only thing it was come to teach you was la'akiv, lichtlev k'archmana, the Torah Shekra, the Pasuk could have said matzah he. right? My tihiyah. It could have said matzahi, right? My tihiyah. And tihiyah, guys, we know that the hey and the ches are interchangeable. So hechiyah. In other words, by using the more sophisticated word, of tihiyah, we're going to darshan both. He and emad and hechiyah. We're going to darshan matzah he that's ma'akiv, and hechiyah that you should keep it in that state, that you should keep that it should not become a chametz. Shma min atati. From here you hear what? You hear two things. Okay, a shtickle agarata, guys. Shtickle agarata. How do we segue into this agarata? Because the conversation between Rav Preda and Rav Ami, because the combination between Rav Preda and Rav Ami. That's how we get we get into this discussion. Okay. Amalei Rabbanon l'Rav Preda. Rabbi Ezra ben Brei de Rav Avtulis, Rav Ezra, the grandson of Rav Avtulis, to who Asiri Rav Elazar ben Azariah, who's the 10th generation after Elazar ben Azariah, to Asiri Ezra, who is mamish 10 generations from Ezra, the famous Ezra who led us back from Bavel. Koi Abava, he's outside. So mamish, he got announced, royal announcement. So Rav Preda said to the Rabbanan, my kuli high, what do you give me this whole, all his yichus? E bar Arayan, who, if he's a bar Arayan, if he's a Talmud Chacham, yoi, great. E bar Arayan, or bar Ahava, and if he's a Talmud Chacham with the big yichus, then yoi, that's also great. However, if he has yichus and he's not a bar Arayan, he's not a Talmud Chacham, then Isha Tichla, then he should be consumed in fire. So, well, what do you give me this whole thing? Says Gemara, no bar Ryan. The Chacham said, no, this person Ezra, he's a bar Ryan. He's a Talmud Chacham. So Amalu Rav Preda said, so Lailul Velesi, let him come in. So Chazi Dahave Achiri Daite. When Ezra came in, he saw Rav Preda was his mind was like a little fachadet. Pasach v'Amar, and Rav Preda began saying, and he told the following pasuk to Rav Ezra: Amarta Lashem, Hashem ato toivasi balolecha. You're my mar, you're my master, and the goodness is not to you. You're my master, but how do we dash my master? Amakles Yisrael lifnei Kodesh Baruch Hu. Rebbeinu Shloim hachzek li toiva shay daitich v'olam. Kodesh Baruch Hu, go ahead and be makatov to me, because I made your presence known in the world by being the conscience of the world, doing what Jews do. So I'm bringing Hashem's presence to the world. So Amalai Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "Toivasi kololech malolecha." No, I don't owe you anything. Ani machzik toivel el Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. If you're telling me that I owe you because you're bringing the presence to the world is what is the avos. They were the first people to make me known in the world. Shenemar, because it says, like Doishim Asher Ba'aretz, Hema Va'adiri Kol Cheftzim Bam. To the Kodesh who are in the earth, Adirim, the mighty ones, all my Cheftzim Bam, all my chayfetz, my desire is in them. Okay, this is what Rav Preda said. Kimin the Shamei the Kama Adir. Once he heard Rav Preda said this, so Rav Ezra jumps upon the word Adir, and we begin with the following drushes, with a few interesting drushes. He said the word Adir. Yadai Adir, v'yifrola Adirim, may Adirim, be Adirim. Let's touch. Yadai Adir, let the Adir come, v'yiporal Adirim, and punish for the Adirim. Who should they punish? May Adirim, be Adirim. So let the Kodesh Baruch Hu come and punish for us from someone with something. That's what it says. Yavoy Adir ze HaKadosh Baruch Hu. T'chsev Adir b'moram Hashem. V'yipor Adirim Eli Yisrael Shnemar v'Adiri kol chefetzi bam. That's the pasuk just quoted. May Adirim, from the Adirim, Ela HaMitzrayim, T'chsev Tzalu ba'aferes b'mayim Adirim, be'Adirim alumim, right, with the Adirim elumayim, right? Shnemar b'koilis mayim ram Adirim mishprayam. So Geshmak, guys, let's see. Yavai Adir, let HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's called Adir, V'yiparil Adirim, take punishment for the Jews, May Adirim from the Mitzrayim, Be Adirim with water. So he showed him that. So now, once we begin playing the word game, the Gemara continues playing the word game. Okay, so now, Yavai Yedid, Ben Yedid, V'yibona Yedid, Li Yedid, B'chelko Shel Yedid, V'yischapru Bo Yedidim. This is a little more, right? So let's touch up. Yava Yedid, let the person who's beloved, right? Ben Yedid, he's the son of a Yedid. V'yibona Yedid, he should build the Yedid. Li Yedid for the Yedid. B'chelko Shel Yedid, V'yischapru Bo Yedidim. Okay, I think we can figure this one out. Yavai Yedid, Ze Shlomo HaMelech. Yedid is Shlomo HaMelech, T'chsiv. Vayishlach biyad Nasan Hanavi, Vayikra Shemo Yedidya, Ba'avor Hashem. Right? They called him Dir Hashem. This is one of the rayas, guys. This is one of the rayas, a very good raya. Anytime I think of this, I always think of Lenny, and he knows why. One of the rayas that David did not do in Avera. If David did an Avera with Neshes Ish, there's no way in the world that anything positive will come out of it because why? Because it's asa lebal v'asa leboil. It's asa to the husband and asa for the person who did the Avera with. How in the world can Batsheva give birth to someone, says the Alshech, who's called Yedid, the Malbim, who's called Yedid Hashem? How is it possible? You're calling Yedid Hashem from this union? And Hashem is calling him a Yedid? So that's one of the rights. Anyway, so Yedid Ben Yedid. So he's the Ben Yedid is so Amid Beis, Ben Yedid. Who's the Ben Yedid? Amid Beis. So Avraham. This is Avram Avinu. Dichsiv Ma'ali Yedidi Bebeisi. What's my Yedid doing in my Beis HaMikdash? The Yibna Yedid, and he will build the Yedid. That's the Beis HaMikdash. Dichsiv Ma Yedidois Mishkan Eisecha. How beloved are the places you live. Li Yedid, for the Yedid, Ze HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dichsiv Ashiru Na Li Yedidi. Mechelka Shel Yedid, and the chelik of Yedid is Binyamin. Shenemar LeBinyamin Amar Yedid Hashem Yishtaf Levetach Alav, and that Moshe Rabbeinu's bracha. And finally, V'yischap Bo Yedidim Eli Yisrael. Dichsiv Nasati Es Yedidus Nafshi B'Kafei Veha. I gave my beloved in the palms of her enemies. So what do you see? Let Shlomo HaMelech the Yedid, Ben Yedid, who's the son of Yedid Avram Avinu, he should come and build the Beis HaMikdash, which is called Yedid, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yedid, in the portion of Yedid, in order that Bnei Yisrael should get a kapara. Very geschmack, play on words. And now we have a third example of it. Yavai toiv v'yikabel toiv mi toiv l'toiva. Let good come and be mekabel and receive good, mi toiv, from good, l'toivim, for those who are good. Yavai toiv is a Moshe. Dichsiv v'teira isai ki toivhu. They saw when Moshe was born, right? It lit up. V'kabel toiv zu toira. Dichsiv ki lakach toiv nasati lachem. Right? Mi toiv from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dichsiv that it says what? It says toiv Hashem. It says what? Toiv Hashem lakol litoivim Eli Yisrael. Dichsiv heitiv Hashem l'toivos. So therefore, it says, let Moshe come, receive the Torah from Hashem who's toiv, from Bnei Yisrael who are toiv. Okay? One more. No, I guess no one's complaining, right? The blog master sitting, this is great. This is great. Anyway, Yavai zeh v'yikabel zois mizeh la'amzu. Yavai zeh, let this come, v'yikabel zois, and receive this, right? Mizeh, from this la'amzu, for this. Yavai zeh zeh Moshe. V'yksiv ki zeh Moshe aish. V'yikabel zois zu Torah. That's the chsiv v'zois ha-Torah shel Moshe. Mizeh zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeh zeh keli vanveyu. Right? For Bnei Yisrael, Amzu, Eli Yisrael, Shenemar, Amzu Kanisa. So we have Zu. So you have to play on all the words. Okay? Very geschmack. Rabbi Yitzchak. B'shah shechara Beis HaMikdash, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Matzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu le'Avram shal yomer Beis HaMikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and he found Avram standing there. Amaloi, Ma'ali Yedidi Bebesi. This is, we got into this, we brought, of course, men the Ben Yedid. We called Avram the Ben Yedid, right? Avram is the Ben Yedid. So he goes, Ma'ali Yedidi Bebesi. Hashem wants to know, what's my beloved doing in the Beis HaMikdash? Amaloi, Aliske Banai Basi. What do you think I came for? I came for my kids. I came for my kids. Amaloi, Banecha Chatu V'Golo. I have to tell you, your children, they were Chata, and therefore, they were put into Golas. So, Amaloi, Banecha Chatu V'Golo. That's what he said. So, Amaloi, Shema B'Shoigei Chatu. Maybe they did it B'Shoigei. Okay, so now, to really understand this, guys, we need a pasuk. For those people who have psukim, it's geschmack. Here's the full pasuk in Yirmiyah, guys. Mali Yedidi Bebesi. It says, Asoisa Hamizimasa Harabim Ubisar Kodesh Yavru Me'alayich Kira Asechi Oz Loisi. I should have gone ahead and printed this out and put it on the screen. So the first part is Mali Yedidi Bebesi. What's the Yedid? What are you doing there, Avram? And he says, he tells him that your children's chayta. So Avram says, made it with shoygeg, and Hashem says, Oisa hamizimasai. They did it b'mezid, guys. Hamizimasai. They did it b'mezid, right? Avram, I'm giving you the pasuk based upon the Gemara. Now the Gemara says maybe they were a miut. The pasuk says harabim. Avram Avinu says, but they had the schus of milah. Guys, it says that Avram Avinu waits by the opening Gehenim, and anyone who was gemalit and didn't go ahead and abuse his milah, he saves him. So he says maybe they were gemalit. So the pasuk says, "Ubisar kodesh yavru me'alayich," and the bisar kodesh they passed by. So in other words, that he's one by one, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is knocking down Avram's being toyen on their behalf. One by one, he's going ahead and he's knocking them out. So then Avram said to him, maybe you could have waited. So Amaloi Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, Kira Seichi Oz Taloisi. Okay, we'll see this. Let's see it inside. Okay, we have the pasuk now. Nachama, Amr Rabbi Yitzchak. B'shah shachar Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Matzah Kodesh Baruch Hu Avram Shloyo Ami Beis HaMikdash. He found them there. Amaloi Kodesh Baruch Hu said, Mali Yedidi B'Beisi, what are you doing? So Amaloi Aliske Banai Basa. I'm wondering what happened to my children. Amaloi Banecha Chatu V'Galu. They're in Galus. Amaloi Shema B'Shogi Chatu. So he continues the pasuk and he says, Amaloi Asoisai Hamizimasa. He says Asoisai Hamizimasa, that what they did it b'mezid. So Amaloi Shema Miuta Chatu. Avram says maybe it was a minority. So Amaloi Harabim. The pasuk says Harabim. So then Avram Avinu jumps to Mila. Haya zchus bris Mila. They had the zchus of what bris Mila. Why couldn't that save them? So Amaloi Kadosh Baruch Hu says that, and this is what the pasuk says: Ubisar kodesh yavorim me'alayich. And then Avram says, Shema im hamtana lehem haya chayzim b'tshuva. If you would have given them a chance, they would have tshuva. Amaloi says the Kadosh Baruch Hu kira seichi as taloisi. When they do bad, you know, right, then they're happy, right? Then they're happy. In other words, the more you delay, the happier they are. So being if they're immersed in, it's not going to help. Look at Rashi, guys, on this pasuk. Go up a little bit, right? The 2nd line from the top. Kira asechi az ta'aloisi b'shas alitzaisam, in the time of their happiness, machzikin yosem berasam v'lechazim behem. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way to guarantee we're going to do tshuva is to punish us. But what happens, in other words, if things go well and you just keep on going well and well and well without a punishment, then you don't get better. So that Avram's taina, maybe they would have been chayzer b'tshuva. Says the Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's this kind of taina. Of course they wouldn't be chayzer b'tshuva, because the way a person's bara and things are good, they stay that way. So therefore, it's not going to be any good. Okay. So miyad haniach yodav al roishay v'hayitzayik u'boicha. Avram puts his hands on his head and he starts to cry. And now you get the next pasuk. Maybe they're finished. So the next pasuk says, Yotza Baskal V'Omar. What does the pasuk say? Zeis Ra'anon Yefei Pri Toyar Kora Hashem Shemech. Zeis Ra'anon Yefei Pri Toyar Kora Hashem Shemech. He says that what? Hashem, he called your name, you're like an olive tree, you're beautiful with nice fruit. Ma Zayis Zu Achruasa B'Soifai. The olive, guys, in the end, it's very good. It takes time to come around, but once it comes around, it's very good. Af Yisrael, Achrisam B'Sleifa. In the end, it's going to be good. So Avram, Zog Zechnesh Avram Avinu. It's going to be good. Okay? The pasuk goes on to say, L'kol hamula gedoyla hitzis eishaleha v'ro dilioseha. L'kol hamula, the sound of commotion. Gedoyla, great commotion. Hits the Seishalecha, it causes fire to burn, V'ro Dol Yosef, and its branches get broken. Amar Reb Chanina bar Papa. Reb Chanina bar Papa says, again, this is the next pasuk. L'koil milehen shamaraglim. It says l'kol amula. What is it speaking about? The kol mileim shamaraglim. Nisra'u dolasem shal Yisrael. It was the sound of the words of the meraglim that caused the branches of Yisrael to be broken. Dam Reb Chanina bar Papa. David Gadol dibur meraglim b'Yisrael. They said a terrible thing. Ki chazaku mimeno. They taina that the giants in Eretz Yisrael, the chasik mimenu, the chasik than us, al tikri mi menu ella mi menu from Hakadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol. They said even Hakadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol shafilu balabayas ein yachol loitzi kelev misham. That even Hakadosh Baruch Hu, who's the balabas, can't get rid of them. So that's how he dashed in the skies. L'kol amula gedoyla, because of the words of the meraglim. That's why he hates the surah. That's why the branches were broken, because of what Yisrael said. About the Meraglim said. If that's the case, it should not say Hay lekol hamula gedoyla, which means great. That's called a great commotion. Hamula lekol mila mi boile. It's the words of the Meraglim. It's not mula. It's mila. So if you're going to dash in that way that it's the words of the Meraglim, it should have said hamula. It should have said mila. Ella amalei kodesh baruch hu Avram kolcha shamati v'chamalti aleihem. So, guys, the lashon says Rabbeinu Gershom of Lekol Hamula is the lashon of Chamal. It's the lashon of what of Rachmanis. Said Hakadosh Baruch Hu heard of Ram Avinu, and he said Elav Rachmanis on Kal Yisrael. Ani amarti shtashu ba'ar malchuyos. I said they should be in 4 malchuyos. We know there's 4 malchuyos. There's Bavel, there's Parsa Madai, there's Yavan, and there's Edom. Kol achad v'achad kesher abra malchuyos, and each one would be the same amount. In other words, I have a girsa over here, guys, which makes sense. The Golos Mitzrayim. Each one of these would have been the size of Golos Mitzrayim. So 400 years for each one. That's what I said. But Hashta, now that you, Avram Avinu, are being torn on their half, each one will be my deposit Bavel was 7 years, Paras was, so it's not going to be as prohibitive. It's not going to be a 400 for each one. Your tefillah be'ad Klal Yisrael, your concern is going to mitigate that the gullus will not be so expansive that each one should be 400 years. That's the first pshat. Ikadi Amri, what another pshat? Ani amarti b'zeh achazeh. I said that the full gullus should be one after the other. Now that you went ahead and you returned on the halves, right? Each one will come at the same time. What does Rashi say on this last one? Miktsasam mishubadim lebavel, miktsasam leyavon, miktsasam leparas, miktsasam leedam. He's going to break up each one of the shibudim. It's not going to be vasachas one. It's going to be broken up into each one. So there's 2 ways. Either he limited what this man, or he spread it out over time rather than being vasachas. That's the way the Gemara learns. Just a little bit more about the Zayis. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Lama Nimshal Yisrael is Zayis. So we had one way that just like the Zayis in the end is good, so too in the end the Klal Yisrael is going to be good. Amar Yeshua ben Levi, Lama Nimshal Yisrael is Zayis. Loi Melacha, Ma Zayis, Ein Olav Noishrim, the leaves don't fall off. Lo Bi Mesacham, V'Leis Nemois HaGeshamim. Af Yisrael, Ein Lehem B'Teila Olamis. It can't be bottled Klal Yisrael. Loi B'Olam Hazeh, V'Olam Haba. Guys, the Gemara it's in Yuma. Yuma says, we said, Akel Agadol Agiba Van Noira. Gibor is that Hashem calls in his anger. Van Noira. What's Noira? That the Jew will always be around. Anytime there's attacks, anytime, anything, right? The Jews dancing, singing on the way to the gas chambers doesn't make a difference. You're like the Zayas tree. The Zayas tree, the leaves stay on forever. The Jew is going to be around forever. It's not going to fall off. It won't be destroyed. That's the way it is, and that's the nitzchias of Klal Yisrael. It won't be removed. Just one more analogy. If I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Lama Nimshli Yisrael the Zayis, Lama Lecha Ma Zayis Ein Amoitzi Shamnai El Al Yidei Kesita Zayas, in order to get the oil out, you have to squeeze it. If you saw in Chayzin Lemutav Ela Al Nevech Ela Yedei Yisurim, the only way we're going to get back to where we were is Al Yedei Yisur. That's we have the Limshal Zayas.